Hey everyone, welcome back to the Errant Venture. My name is Steve. Today we are going to talk about the Bad Batch and how they tell the story of why the Stormtroopers are going to come in and why they will not be clones. So, what we learn in the Bad Batch is that Tarkin is on Kamino evaluating the clones. He wants to see how the clones do in all their missions and their training and essentially determine, are they worth having? Are they worth the investment? Remember, clones cost a lot of money. They take, at least the first generation of clones, take 10 years to grow. During that time, you have to feed them, you have to train them, you have to educate them, you have to feed them. I think I said that. But you have to clothe them. You have to take care of them. And it's 10 years before they can be used. As opposed to if you go out and you hire recruits and you train them in a couple years, they're already of age. They've already got experiences. They already have an education, hopefully. But they are now 18 years old. You haven't had to feed them their entire life. You haven't had to train them their entire lives. The thing is, you're not going to have the quality of soldier that you would with the clones. But that's part of it. You're going to have so many recruits because it doesn't take that long. You're talking about less than a quarter of the time that it would take just to go to each planet and say, hey, who wants to join us? Who wants to be part of the Empire? Who wants to be a Stormtrooper? And that's going to cost a lot less than, let's make clones. DNA is running low, but we're making a lot of them. But at the same time, 10 years. Here's my order. I'll see you in 10 years. That's not really the best way to have a military when you can have someone who's already 18 come through, start boot camp, and be ready to go in a couple weeks or months, and fraction of the cost. But during this analyzation, Tarkin comes across the Bad Batch and says, hey, you know what? Let's see what they can do. And he's impressed. He's genuinely impressed by what they can do, to the point where he actually asks, hey, can we make more of them? Maybe these are going to be the type of clones that would allow us to keep going with clones if we can keep getting people like this. And essentially what he learns is there's only 5 clones that are made like this. You have Hunter, you have Wrecker, you have Crosshair, you have Tech, and then you have newly discovered Omega. Remember, Echo is a reg who has been altered by the Techno Union, so he's not a genetically modified clone. He's just one that kind of went through a bad experience where they pretty much turned him into a computer. Kind of like a little Vader if you think about it. But, so we see Tarkin evaluating the clones, and he's talking about the cost of them. He says, hey, why would I want to continue spending so much money on their training if it's going to cost so much? I can get so much more going everywhere else. And you can kind of see the Caminos changing their allegiance. In the Clone Wars, you can see them, they're always agreeing with the Chancellor. Always agreeing that, hey, you need more. Trying to convince the Senate that you need more. And really buttering them up to get their business. And now that they feel, hey, we can see the end of the line is there, they're kind of trying to move away from us. They're trying to convince them now, hey, you're not going to have as good of a soldier if you go with recruits. Ours are the best. They're genetically great. They're trained well. They're ready to go. And you're not going to have that with going to system recruits. You're just not. So that's what they're trying to show. But what we also see is, and if you remember, Order 66 has already happened. We see that from another point of view in Episode 1 of The Bad Batch. And you can kind of see the change in the mentality of the clones. Before, in the Clone Wars, they seemed a lot more talkative. They seemed a lot more, hey, we're brothers. Where now, at least when they have their helmets on, the ones you don't get to really learn, they kind of seem stiffer. They're not as happy, if that makes sense. They're more direct, straight to the point. Almost kind of like droids in armor, if you think about it. So, you see that starting to happen, and that could be something to do with their inhibitor chips being triggered. Because it's kind of like, hey, that alert went off, it happened, and now it's the new them. So, that could also be something that they might look into, and you see Tarkin kind of starting to experiment with inhibitor chips a little bit with Crosshair. With Crosshair, he goes, hey, can we increase it? Make him more loyal to the Empire. And that's exactly what they do. And you can see Crosshair struggling with it when they're doing it. And it does not look comfortable whatsoever. But you can see it happening. So maybe that's another route that they might choose to go. Granted, it's Star Wars. We know what comes next. But for the sake of this series, maybe the thought process is maybe we can increase their loyalty, increase their inhibitor chips, and have an even better clone force under us. Now, if you think about, in Legends and in other books, why they got rid of the clones, it was always about cost. It was always about, hey, it takes 10 years to make these. It takes a long time for them to be ready to fight. It costs a lot of money to do that. And that's why they move away to Stormtroopers. Stormtroopers just cost that much less. But it's also the strand of DNA from Jango Fett is starting to wear thin. They've used it, they've broken it up, they've gotten tons of clones out of one strand of DNA, and now it's kind of running low. Remember, Jango Fett died. He's not there anymore. And the clones might not be as perfect DNA as Jango had. Well, the next thing is, what happens if someone steals the DNA? And in Legends, that's exactly what they try doing. People try to steal the DNA. They also did in Clone Wars. They try to, General Grievous tries to steal the DNA. That way, they can find a disease, something that will make the clone sick, and potentially kill them. And if you can find something that makes one of them sick, and if it makes them sick easy, it's going to make them all sick easy. They all have the same immune system, the same DNA, the same way of fighting these diseases. So one small disease can wipe out all the clones, the entire army. Where if you move to Stormtroopers, you have a whole different group of people, different DNAs, different things. So one virus, it might take out a few Stormtroopers, but it's not going to take out the entire group. So that's one of the reasons why in Legends they chose to get rid of it, and that wasn't even mentioned in this series yet. Maybe it will be in the future. We've only seen 2 episodes. But the other reason why they went to Stormtroopers was the need for more. You gotta remember, the Empire is starting out. They're bringing in a lot more territory, a lot more systems. And they're shutting down the droids are gone. But when you bring in that much more territory, you need the resources to police it. And there might not be that many clones around. If you think about it, the clones were always outnumbered. Every battle they went to, every victory they had, and every defeat, they were almost always outnumbered. So now you need to fill in those ranks. Some of the clones are going to stop fighting for you. Some of the clones are going to keep going. And then you bring in people from around the systems. Even some, like say someone from Tatooine, wants to stick around and help police Tatooine. You're getting locals to help out. There's so many different ways you can go about it, but these are people who are already old enough to carry a gun and just need some training. So, bigger military, more people, lower cost, and I expect that we're going to start to see that as the Bad Batch moves on. You're going to have lower quality troopers, but you're going to have more of them. And when you don't necessarily have an enemy per se, all you gotta do is overwhelm them. You see in all the movies, you see it in military history. Typically those who have the most firepower, the most numbers, are going to win, because eventually 1 out of 100 shots is going to land. So that's just a quick description of pretty much what we see in the Bad Batch as to why they're moving away from the clones. Also touch base on what we see in Legends as to why they move away from the clones. It's going to be interesting to see what happens next in the Bad Batch. I'm looking forward to it. I know you're looking forward to it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you think about the clones and if there's a better way to keep them going, or if you think the smart move is to go to Stormtroopers. See you guys on the next one on the Errant Venture.